I wanted to talk about how I'm trying to build a farm the wrong way. So, I live and work on a cherry orchard, and it's afforded me a lot of freedoms with my free time. Because I live here, I don't have the trouble of commuting back and forth, which is great. Because I live here, it also affords me the ability to work longer hours when they're needed very easily. Now, as life's progressed, of course, more and more responsibilities, the plate fills up. But I knew I wanted to do something with livestock, and I've got lots of videos on here about all these different aspects. But what I wanted to talk about is how I did it or started unconventionally, not really listening to the conventional wisdoms. And that might be wrong, but I'm going to talk to you about why I did it. So, for starters, the sheep is going to be a good example. Sheep and goats. I tried it. The goats I ended up having to pen raise, and I didn't like it. It was one of those things that's not what I wanted, and then it also turned into because they were pen raised, they don't have any feed, and then I'm feeding every day, and that sucks. That's hard. That's hard to make anything on, and that's part of the point. Is I wanted to be able to at least eat something, and the cost of that animal's covered. Well, not even necessarily a profit, but my labors and the income from the animals at least covers the cost of the one I'm going to eat. Now the goat, we tried it, pen raising them, and then I tried eating it, and I wasn't a big fan of it. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. Maybe further down the line I would look at it again. My favorite part of it was the ground. Ground goat is pretty good. You probably, if I didn't know, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that and grass-fed beef. And ground, anyways. And that's good, because that's a pretty inexpensive way to put away quite a decent chunk of ground beef, or ground goat in this case. And goat is, when it's sold, is labeled as mutton, right? So if you ever see mutton in the grocery store, there's a large variety of animals that are labeled mutton. But anyways, that's besides the point. I tried things on the inexpensive because money's always an issue, and I'm trying my best not to finance anything, just because the biggest reason for me on trying not to finance things is I can see it out where I can build it up, and it's not going to cost me a percentage of my income. Unfortunately, financing, yeah, if you go and you finance, there's a couple of things that decision forces you into. Right off the get-go, you have to have income, because you've got a note you have to pay off, right? So you have to buy, like in cattle and in sheep, you have to buy pears or bread, or yeah, that's basically it. You got to buy bread, or you got to buy bread or cow calf, or you got to buy pears and sheep. So in sheep, it's good because it's a low cost up front, and you can go ahead and you can start off, and you can. I didn't know what I wanted, right? So I look at woolies, and woolies look like they grow better. So I put some woolies up there. I'm not afraid of sharing. I'll do it, right? I do some hares, and I try them out. Well, as it turns out, the hare sheep don't necessarily outperform in terms of the meat, but they are more profitable. I had more lambs out of the hare sheep that didn't get bottle raised or didn't pass away because of negligence on the mom's side. They were just more successful in lambing. So my production on the hare sheep was better. That meant there was more income from them. And then the or the wool sheep, because they were larger animals, also ate significantly more. They didn't forage as well either. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep back a couple of the woolies because there's two in there that I really like, and the rest will be hare. And everything after that, I'll run a hare breed ram. So I've got a nice little Dorper ram I've got as a bottle lamb, and he's growing out, and when he breeds them, he breeds them. So what I did was probably the most wrong way you could. I didn't go out and buy the top grade stock. I didn't go out knowing exactly what I wanted. I wanted to find out what worked best in our operation, and I fortunately made a small profit on it. I made about $1,500. It's not great. It is what it is. I made mistakes. I lost lambs, and it is what it is. but I still made a small profit on it, and I ended up downsizing to a more manageable size, something that's a little less intensive. And if I decide I want more, bottle lamb season is always right around the corner in the spring and the fall. So I can always add later on the low end, right? I'm not looking to run an A grade, top grade sheep thing. I'm looking just to produce. That's it. And so the lambs go out for either breeding stock or to be raised on for meat. I haven't sold anything ready to butcher. I raised them off as weanlings. I guess I can't say that. I sold one of the ram lambs we had. I used them for a season, and then I went and kicked them out after that because I wanted to change up genetics. It wasn't bad, but I sold him out, and he was a little over a year old. It worked out good. Now, the cows is another story. So the cows, because cattle are so expensive, I didn't want to go out and I didn't want to buy at the top end. I didn't want to go buy cow-calf pairs at the most expensive option I have. I also didn't want the worst, I don't want to say the worst feed conversion. I didn't want to end up spending as much as I physically could on feed, raising commercial cows. Running your Herefords, Charolais, and Angus are good examples, or Limousines and Seminoles, right? You get what I mean. The commercial cows, there's a huge cost involved. And so that's basically what I've revolved around is the cost, and it's because I don't want to do financing. If you do financing, you can't do a lot of the things I did. I bought heifers. Weaned heifers. I bought weaned heifers at the bottom of the costs, right? Now, the good thing about that is if you do a growth chart, I did. I don't have it in front of me, otherwise I'd walk through it. You can calculate the feed it's going to cost to get it up to mature weight where it's going to breed, and then you can tally that up additionally until it puts a calf on the ground. And there's no way I could cut it where the cost to raise a heifer of any breed up from wean, so let's say 6 months, all the way till it's had a calf, and I think I did the numbers out to 26 months old. The total cost on all of the feed plus the purchase price didn't equal, it was still less than buying that 26-month-old heifer or a first season cow. So not only did I just put out my first calf for cheaper than what it costs to run a mature cow, I'm also increasing the value of the herd by buying smaller animals. So my input is lower and their value increases, and that first calf that's put out eats up all the cost on feeding it out, which was still less than feeding 1 year on a mature cow. So it made sense. So that's what I did. Now, I didn't have a note to pay, so it just was what it was. I paid as I could to buy feed. If I could afford to do 6 bales at a time, I bought 6 bales at a time. If I could only do 2, then I went out next week to buy another 2. But that's the point. What I did was probably the most wrong way you could, but I wasn't going to not do it because I'm not willing to go and take a loan that's going to cost me an additional $20,000. I wasn't going to do it where I wasn't going to be able to do the things that I looked at and went, okay, well, this makes sense. I can have a herd that costs me less. Yeah, my marketability on the calves is going to be a little less, running things like Texas Longhorns, but they cross up great. There's no stats I could see where the Texas Longhorn to a commercial, whether or not that was Herefords or whether or not that was Angus, where they didn't do well. They at least did on par on all the studies with the Angus, or they did on par with the crossbred Angus Herefords, which was wild to me because I thought for sure the Texas Longhorn would slow them down a little bit. But it's not. It's faster than even the Angus, just a purebred Angus, which is good. I mean, it's one of those things, trial and error, we're going to find out for real. So, but we can't make decisions on things that haven't happened yet. So, we're doing what we're doing. Now, what I did was I bought inexpensive breeds of cattle, right? Just to get cows on the ground, just to start doing it. And it's like I said, I wasn't going to sit here and wait until I saved up $30,000 to go and buy myself 5 cows. I went and I just did what I could as I could. And now I've got 8 cows in there. One of them is not mine. I bought 2 as a package deal, and my boss ended up buying that one with me. And so he bought one, I bought the other. They came in together, and we got a good deal on them because we bought them as a pair. And that was great. That's great. So I've got 7 cows out there. I'm feeding out 8. And my total input on those 7 cows is, I think it's $16,000 is what I was into just the cows. It might be less than that. I can't remember if it was $16,000 for the entirety of last year or if it was $16,000 for the cows, which is great because all these cows, I mean, like, if I was going to go and I was going to finance, that would buy me 4, right? Right now, current cost, yeah, that would buy me 4. So I've got more on the ground, and I'm doing the quick math in my head on heifers, not even cow calf. If I was doing cow calf, I'd have 2 out there. I have 2 of them. That'd be it. And I wouldn't even be able to buy at the top end of it. I'd have to buy 2 cow calf pairs, but they'd be first timers, right? So I'd have to buy on the bottom side of that too, for the value I've got out there. And one of them is a steer. We're not even talking heifers. One of them is a steer I'm trying to finish out for the end of the year. So, yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, it's the wrong way to do it because I'm not maximizing. But what I am doing is I'm trying to maximize in the gap between the income and the inputs. That's what I'm trying to maximize. I'm not trying to maximize the size of the animals to try and maximize the dollar value that they're going to sell for. I'm trying to decrease my cost as much as I can because what are the highest costs? It's the livestock, the point of purchase, and the feed. Now, you can pick livestock that decrease both those things, right? I'm going to harp on it again. Those Texas Longhorns, man. They eat crummier forage. So I can buy first seeding hay at a discount, or I can buy first crop hay at a discount, and it gets eaten. They eat it all. They utilize 100% of it. That's great. That's fabulous. So now if I don't have to go and spend $80 per bale, I can go and I can tell you how much I paid. The last 4 that I bought were $30 each because they were last season and weedy. 100% of the hay got eaten. Nothing was left. And that's even running. Like, I got mini Herefords in there and an Angus. So yeah, sure, they're more picky, but they're not going to not eat because everyone else is eating. It's hilarious. You watch them and it's like, you know she doesn't want to, but she does. So yeah, okay, I'm doing things the wrong way, but I'm doing it, and I'm not gonna let it, like everyone else, sit here. Like, the conventional wisdom is you buy yourself some nice commercial cows, maximize on the size, but the problem is if you maximize on one side, you maximize on the other. And unfortunately, I don't think it's the case that if you maximize your cost to produce the calves, to produce the maximum income on the calves, I think that gap in between gets shorter because everything's more expensive, right? So you got to play in between a little bit. And I was even thinking about this too. Like, if someone was running a commercial herd and you wanted to cut some costs on your feed, throw yourself in a couple of Texas Longhorns. They're not going to produce as good, but you know what they will do? They will eat the crummier feed. So if you've got all of a sudden, like, and it's like I said, the Anguses will eat the feed if everyone else is eating. And I was like, fuck me, that's not even a bad idea. If you run a 50-50 commercial and Texas Longhorn herd, I mean, on the beef side, you don't see any loss. It's still the same dollar per pound, and the feed conversion is per pound as well. So what's the difference? It's literally the way the animals look and potentially the size at the end. But you paid for the size completely proportional. It's not like you're losing the money. It's the money you spent to produce per pound is just it's 1-to-1. So, and people will sit here and say, "Oh, but you have to feed a heifer out for 2 years before you get a calf on the ground." Yeah, it's 2 years of a very small cow. And then after that first calf, then it starts to get a little bit bigger. And all of a sudden you're like, just do the quick, simple math. 365 days at an average of 700 pounds or 365 days of an average of 1,200 pounds. What's the difference? This is going to be a pretty big difference. So you can do things the wrong way, and I think you'll still get your foot in the door. And what I'm saying is just as long as you get your foot in the door and you can start putting some calves on the ground, or you start putting lambs on the ground, or whatever it is, chickens even, just as long as you get your foot in the door and you get the ball rolling, as soon as you've got income, you can make decisions. You can just start changing things. I could sit here and decide, you know what, I want more cow at the end. I want bigger calves, and that's my end goal. And I'll tell you this now from the sheep, that was not a good decision on the sheep. I went and I did Suffolk. I bought a bunch of Suffolks because I wanted the big lambs. And what I found out is my feed cost did not double. It like quadrupled. All of a sudden, I could feed a bale a day versus a bale every 4. It was not worth it. It wasn't worth it. All of a sudden, my cost per day went through the roof. And then when the Suffolk finally started lambing, the actual lambs I was able to sell, I didn't actually sell a single Suffolk lamb. That sucked. That sucked. But it is what it is. But it's because the Suffolk breed. That's differences that aren't completely comparable to cattle. But the cost to produce the lambs and the cost to produce the calves is almost proportional. You want to maximize. That's what it is. All of a sudden, your angle to cut costs on one side is a little bit less because you have to maximize on this side. Or, if you cut the cost here and you've maximized on this side, right, you're going to end up with small versions of that cow. I could be running a commercial herd of Hereford Angus, and I could cut the cost on the hay, still feed out cheaper hay, but they're not going to grow as good because they're picky eaters. They're not going to eat 100% of it. I'm going to have a bunch of waste. So, if I got 800 pound bale and 80% is being eaten, 160 pounds of that is not going to get eaten. Every bale. Or run something like your Texas Longhorns, your Highlands, your Corianis, whatever. Things that eat forage way better or utilize more forage, and there's no waste. And you can cut your cost on your feed. But this is what I'm saying. Conventional wisdom says that what I'm doing is wrong. And I'm going to try my best to make it work. And not just make it work, but make it work in a way where people go, how the fuck did you do that? That's my idea. That's my goal. And yeah, I'm probably doing it wrong. But that's okay. I'm doing it. Anyways.